banks have significantly lower exposure than they did entering the last downturn, and we believe this is a mitigant to the increased asset risk since the beginning of the pandemic. On slide 36, we offer a slightly different view here. Here the banks are sorted by BCA, and we break down each concentration by loan type. So construction and land in green, non-farm, non-residential in light blue, and multifamily in dark blue. The four most concentrated banks, New York Community, Signature, PPAC, Gladstone, and Axos, have a significant portion of their portfolios in multifamily loans, which have performed better than the other CRE types. Regarding non-farm, non-residential or other CRE, hospitality and retail loans have been the most stressed during the pandemic, as we all know. For those banks that have disclosed their exposure to these sectors, they represent just over 20% of total CRE loans. Slide 37 includes a chart that I expect most of you are familiar with. It shows the system-wide CRE loss rates in the last two downturns. And this history is a key reason that we continue to focus on this asset class, even though we haven't yet seen a dramatic spike in NPLs or charge-offs outside of the hospitality and retail portfolios. CRE can be a non-story for years until it's not. And when things go bad, they go bad quickly, and the impact is typically severe. On slide 38, we show the CRE reserve coverage for those banks that disclosed it in their Q4 releases. And unlike many of the other asset classes that saw reserve releases in Q4, CRE reserves mostly increased, given the ongoing concerns and uncertainty related to the pandemic. The increase in CRE reserves in Q4, and really throughout 2020, supports our expectation that problem loans and charge-offs will rise this year. But given the good reserve coverage and capital, which Alan touched on earlier, and banks' reduced exposure to construction and land loans, the banks should be able to absorb likely charge-offs. These risks are largely incorporated in the bank's BCAs, and we don't expect weakening in CRE asset quality to result in rating downgrades. Now I'll pass it back to Anna.
Actually, as I still have you here, I think one of the audience members wanted an explanation of the history, what happened in 1992 period on commercial real estate.
Yeah, so, in terms of the history there, we had, big real estate crisis, late 80s, early 90s. We had a lot of the smaller banks, the thrifts with a lot of commercial real estate exposure, experienced significant losses. And like the last downturn in 07, 08, 09, we saw, a large number of bank failures, which were largely driven by their outsized concentration to CRE. And in particular, when you look at that slide, you can see the construction charge-off spiked in both crises. And that's been, an area of focus of regulators and ourselves. And as I mentioned, in this downturn, which wasn't necessarily driven by real estate, banks have reduced their exposures as we've entered this crisis. And so we think that is certainly a mitigant as we look ahead in 2021.
Great. Well, thank you for a real-time answer on a live question. I appreciate that, Joe. Okay, well, we can come back with any more questions on CRE in the Q&A session. And we'll go for our last presentation with Warren Kornfeld, Senior Vice President of Banking and Specialty Finance Team. And Warren specializes in our views on consumer credit at large. And there have been some positive surprises not expected in a crisis that he will cover here with us. So Warren, on to you.
So thanks, Anna. So we flip to the next slide. As has been well reported, as we've spoken about today, as we've written in our quarterly credit research, asset quality through the pandemic has been exceptionally strong. Now, on first blush, at somewhat, you'd say it's surprising, definite disconnect